Okay guys, today we're going to look at lesson 10.4 and that's going to be in your Big Go Math book. The title of the lesson is called Classifying Quadrilaterals and the page numbers are 393 to 396. Our learning target we're going to look at with this lesson is to classify two-dimensional figures based on the presence or absence of parallel or perpendicular lines, or we're going to be looking at whether there's a presence or absence of angles of a particular size. So we're going to be looking at our previous lessons dealing with angle types such as acute, obtuse, right, as well as our lesson on parallel and perpendicular lines. And we're going to be applying what we know now to specifically quadrilaterals. And a quadrilateral, it's going to be a four-sided polygon. And within our four-sided polygons, there are several different types that we can probably think of. We have a square, a rectangle, parallelograms, and also a rhombus. Those are just a few that come to mind. And so really we're looking at any sort of four-sided flat, flat meaning two-dimensional shape. And why do we have all these names for them? And the reason is because of the types of angles within them and the types of lines that create the shape. So again, we're looking at our previous lessons and applying what we know about angles and lines to classifying all of these different four-sided figures. I want you to look at my question here at the bottom, and hopefully by the end of this we can answer it. So my question is, why is a rectangle a square, but I can't say that a square is a rectangle? So a rectangle is a square, but a square is not a rectangle, and why? So hopefully by the end of this you'll be able to answer that for me. Let's go ahead and look on page 393. Okay guys, let's look at the unlock the problem. It says a quadrilateral is a polygon with four sides and four angles. You can name a quadrilateral by the vertices of its angles. And what that means is you can, just like when we name an angle or name a triangle, we want to be looking at the points. So the picture to the right, you can identify it. I'm just going to put quad. There is no little triangle symbol or angle symbol for a quadrilateral. So usually you would write it out like this, quadrilateral, but to save time, I'm just going to put quad. So you could also name it quadrilateral, and you want to kind of just go in a circle. You can't crisscross. You can't say D, B, A, C when you're labeling it. So one of the options you could have, it says quadrilateral A, B, C, D. You could also say quadrilateral B, C, D, A. You could say quadrilateral C, D, A, B. You could go the reverse of it. You could say A, D, C, B. So there's lots and lots of variations on how you can name that particular quadrilateral. Let's go back down here. It says quadrilateral ABCD is a possible name for the figure shown, but we just listed a few other options as well. Quadrilateral A, like ACBD, is not a possible name. You cannot crisscross and name a quadrilateral that way. It also goes on to tell you down here, assume that line segments that appear to be parallel are parallel. Because remember, having parallel lines and perpendicular lines is a really important way to identify and name different types of quadrilaterals. I just want to bring you back over here as well. It says the tick marks, which are these little blue things right here, the little tick marks on the line segments show that they have the same length, so that opposite sides are the same length. So opposite sides here have the same length. If you had one tick mark all the way around, that would mean that all four sides are the same length, kind of like the rhombus here. But in this case, you have the top and the bottom. So line segment BC is the same length as line segment AD. And then you have line segment BA is the same length as line segment CD. That's what those little blue tick marks mean. So opposite sides in this parallelogram are of the same length. Let's look down here at some common quadrilaterals and be really mindful of this bottom section down here. It lists all of the different characteristics, or attributes is a really good word. You might see that a lot when we're talking geometry. These are all the attributes or characteristics of these particular quadrilaterals. Let's start here with the trapezoid. Now the trapezoid here has one pair of parallel sides. It's going to be this side right here, this bottom segment, along with this top line segment. So the bottom, let me highlight that. So you have this top line segment and this bottom line segment are parallel to each other, and that is a attribute or feature of a trapezoid. I kind of like trapezoids. I think they might be my favorite quadrilateral. I'm thinking about it. Let me think about that. So moving on to parallelogram, the features of a parallelogram, that it has two pairs of parallel sides. So you have the top line segment and the bottom are parallel, and then you have the left line segment and the right line segment are also parallel. And then the parallelogram also has to have two pairs of sides of equal length. So opposite sides are of the same length. So you have to have both of those requirements in order for it to be a parallelogram. Now, a rhombus is a special kind of parallelogram in that it has two pairs of parallel sides. Those are the same here. But instead of having two pairs of sides that are equal length, it has all four sides the same length. So that kind of takes it to a special kind of parallelogram. So all four sides, and you can see the little tick marks are all the same, are of the same length. Okay, moving on to rectangle. Rectangle and square, you guys are probably most familiar with, and I would try to devote most of my energy into really memorizing or really being familiar with these features or attributes of rectangles and squares, because you're going to see them a lot just in your work and examples and questions. So a rectangle, it has two pairs of parallel sides. So you have the top and bottom line segments are parallel, and then the left and the right are also parallel. You also need to have two pairs of sides of equal length, which it does. So top and bottom, right? Top and bottom are of the same length, and then left and right are also of the same length. And then a special, and this is what separates it from a parallelogram, is that in a rectangle, it has four right angles. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 right angles. In a parallelogram over here, they're not four right angles. You actually have two acute angles and two obtuse angles. So that's the difference between a parallelogram and a rectangle, is the type of angles it has. And then lastly, we have our square. So a square, we have two pairs of parallel sides. That's the same as a rectangle. It has four sides of equal length. So this one right here is what makes a square a square. It makes it so special, is that not only does it have two pairs of parallel sides, and not only does it have four right angles like the rectangle, but all of the side lengths are the same length. Okay, so all of the side lengths are the same length. Okay, looking at activity 1, the directions read identify right angles in quadrilaterals. So we're going to be, again, drawing upon our previous lesson last week on angle types, and we're going to be applying them to quadrilaterals. So it says for quadrilateral color line, we're going to make I'm going to just put like an R for red. if there are exactly 4 right angles. So I'm going to put an R right here because you have your square corner, and remember that square corner indicates it's a 90-degree right angle. For blue, exactly 2 right angles. So I see 1, 2, so I'm going to put blue here. And then orange has exactly 1 right angle. So I'm going to put an O right here. All of the other ones, this one, this one, this one, and this one, do not have right angles. They either have acute or obtuse. Let's go ahead and move on and flip the page. Okay, on page 394, activity number 2, we're going to be looking at quadrilaterals now in the context of whether or not they have parallel lines, and how many do they have. So we're going to sort them using this Venn diagram with exactly 1 pair of parallel lines. Let me look, does anyone remember from the previous page what kind of quadrilateral that would be if it has 1 pair of parallel lines? Anyone? Anyone? Yes, some of you are saying trapezoid. That would be correct. So a trapezoid is a quadrilateral with 1 pair of parallel lines. So you can see I highlighted the 1 pair of parallel lines. A pair means 2, by the way. So you have 2 lines or a pair of lines that are parallel to each other. I see this one as well. Those look also parallel to each other. So I'm going to start labeling and filling this in. Normally you would write quadrilateral out all the way, but I'm not going to have enough room. So I'm going to just put Q or quad. And I'm just going to say J, K, L, M. And then quad T, U, V, W. And I'm trying to see this one right here. You know, you might, if you just kept extending out the line a little further with your pencil, you would see that eventually they would cross each other out there. So if you are uncertain, you know, extend the line a little further with your pencil, and you'll see that eventually they would cross and touch each other. So those would not be parallel lines. I think that is all for 1 pair. Let's look at quadrilaterals that have 2 pairs of parallel lines. So I can see this is a pair, and then you also have this as a pair. These 2, we know a square has to have 2. Okay, I think that's it. I'm going to go ahead and label them in my box or in my circle. So we're going to say quad E, F, G, and H. So this guy right here, E, F, G, H. And then also quadrilateral A, B, C, D would also have 2 pairs of parallel lines. And I believe the other 2, I'm kind of turning my page a little bit just to get a good, or in your case, your book. The other 2 appear not to have any pairs or, any pairs of parallel lines. So I'm going to put them in the green circle. So quadrilateral P, Q, R, S have none. And then also quad Q, R, N, Z. That also does not have any parallel lines. Let's shift the page up a little further to the try this. We're going to be looking at classifying each figure as many ways as possible. And we're going to write quadrilateral, trapezoid, parallelogram, rhombus, rectangle, or square. Now, I know it says as many ways as possible. So I'm probably going to have more than one word. And right off the bat, I hope you can pick up on that they're all quadrilaterals. They all have 4 sides. They're all closed. They're not open at all. So each one of these should have quadrilateral. Quadrilateral. Don't spell it wrong. It's right here. Quadrilateral. They are all quadrilaterals. Okay, going back to my first one, I have opposite sides are the same length, and I do not have, they do not, I'm looking for right angles, to be honest. That's kind of where my mind goes to first, because that's going to tell me, is it parallelogram or rhombus, or am I looking at a square or a rectangle? And since I don't have right angles, I should be thinking, okay, parallel or rhombus. I should be in that kind of zone. So two pairs of parallel lines. So parallel, maybe a parallelogram. And let's see here. And it's not all four sides are the same length, so it's just opposite sides are the same length. So that should be a parallelogram. If it was kind of like a slanted square, that would be a rhombus. But if it's like a slanted rectangle with no right angles, that's a parallelogram. Number two, my favorite, trapezoid. Trapezoid. Now, usually you see a trapezoid like this, but sometimes you see a trapezoid where it's like this. And that is also considered a trapezoid because you have this top and this bottom are one pair of parallel lines. So again, this could also be a trapezoid right here. And lastly, this is pretty easy. We have a, this one I actually have several. It's definitely a quadrilateral. It's definitely a square. And remember, a square is a rectangle because really a rectangle just has to have opposite sides are the same length, two pairs of parallel lines, and four right angles. Right? So a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. It's the side lengths that make them different. A square has to have all four sides the same length, whereas a rectangle has to have opposite sides the same length. Okay, so the side lengths are what make a square special or different than a rectangle. Let's go ahead and move on. We'll flip to the next page, please. Okay, on page 395 at the Share and Show, it says, tell whether the quadrilateral is a trapezoid, parallelogram, rhombus, rectangle, or square. And we have to be thinking about the attributes, what kind of angles, what kind of lines there are within the quadrilateral. So how many pairs of parallel sides? So we have, so our pairs of parallel sides, we would have two. Right? We have this pair, and then we have the vertical pair as well. So we would have two pairs of parallel sides. How many sides of equal length? It would be 4. And how many right angles? It's a 0. So because it doesn't have any right angles, I can get rid of square, I can get rid of rectangle. Because it has two pairs of parallel sides, I can get rid of trapezoid. And now I'm looking at the equal sides of equal length, and a rhombus is kind of like a, it's, remember, a rhombus is like that slanted square where all four sides are the same length. So quadrilateral ABCD is also known as a rhombus. So I'm kind of just doing process of elimination there, going through all the attributes. Let's look at number 2. We're going to continue classifying them and write as many as we can. So number 2 kind of looks a little funky. I don't have any right angles. So again, square, rectangle are gone. I don't have any parallel lines. So trapezoid, parallelogram, and rhombus are all gone. So really, number 2, it's just a quadrilateral. Quadrilateral. Do not spell them wrong or spell it wrong because they're all right there. So again, number 2 is kind of an unconventional quadrilateral. It does have 4 sides. It's just not something we're used to seeing. Number 3, we have 4 right angles. So we are in the rectangle and square area. And because I don't have all 4 sides the same length, it should lead me to a rectangle. But it does say list all of my possible answers, so I need to have a quadrilateral there as well. Quadrilateral. Okay, and then lastly, number 4, Definitely a quadrilateral. And remember, it's that slanted square, so it's going to be a rhombus. Okay, let's shift down to the on your own. Why don't you go ahead and, you know how I like to have you pause the video. So go ahead, pause the video, try this one on your own. Remember, you're listing all the possible ways. Okay, so go ahead, pause now, answer 5, 6, 7 on your own, and then hit play again, and I'll model for you the examples. Okay, guys, you guys should have paused, and then quickly I'm going to go through. So number 5, I'm going to abbreviate this time. So it's definitely a quadrilateral, and it's that slanted rectangle, so it's going to be a parallelogram. So no right angles. And then number 6, it's going to be a quadrilateral, 4 right angles, 4 sides the same length, all 2 pairs of parallel lines, so it's going to be a square. And remember, a square is a rectangle, so we would have rectangle on here. And then lastly, number 7, it's definitely 1, 2, 3, 4-sided. So it's a quadrilateral. And look, this one, it does have 1 pair of parallel lines. So it is a trapezoid. Yeah, I think a trapezoid is my favorite. Oops. Trapezoid. Okay, guys, let's flip over to 396. Okay, on page 396, we're going to look at number 8. The explain how a rhombus and square are alike and how they are different. They actually have several things that they have in common, and one thing in particular that separate them and make them unique to themselves. So how are they alike? So they are both quadrilaterals. I'm going to just put they're both quads. What else can we say about them? Okay, but think about their side lengths. Right, so they both have, let me just make this one sentence. So they're both quads and have 4 sides of the same length. It's really difficult to write on this because I can't put my hand on the screen or it'll move it. So sorry for my penmanship. One more thing, the opposite sides, they have 2 pairs of parallel lines, right? So they also have 2 pairs of parallel lines. What makes them different from each other, and I keep saying, oh, you know, the rhombus is like a slanted square. The slant comes from their angles. So the slant comes from having an acute and obtuse angles as opposed to 4 right angles. So that's, when I say slant, that's what it's coming from. It's slant really means, hey, their angles are really acute and obtuse. So what makes them different is that a square has 4 right angles. And a rhombus has 2 acute and 2 obtuse. So really the angle measurements are what separate them from each other. And then lastly, number 9, our test prep. It says, which figure can never have 2 pairs of parallel sides? So take a minute, pause your video, and then answer that. Okay, guys, you should have paused your video, answered it. Which figure can never have two pairs of parallel sides, meaning it can, in this case, only one of them has one pair, and then that one would be the trapezoid, letter A. And for fun, I won't go over this, but I want to, if you guys have extra time, if you want to look at number 11, that's the Louvre. It's pronounced the Louvre Museum in Paris, France. And number 11 says how many triangles do you see in the diagram? There are actually 12. And I'm wondering if you can, I think I tilted that. Can you find them? So in this case, there are 12. Can you find them? Obviously, I see one right here. Obviously, the big one. But can you find the other 11? Dun, dun, dun. Okay, good luck. Tomorrow, you will have a workbook page in your small workbook. Okay, so tomorrow will be a workbook page, front and back, that you will need to complete that corresponds to this lesson. So it's going to be all about quadrilaterals, okay? When you submit that, that's what I need for like pictures of it if you're not working in Google Classroom, or if you are in Google Classroom, that's what I need you to submit online, okay? All right, we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye, guys.